In previous sections, I configured router 1's interface and I assigned an IP address to that. Now I'm going to do the same on router 2 and see if the connectivity is there. So I go to enable mode and then I go to configuration mode using the configure terminal command. And now I want to see a list of interfaces. I am used to use these commands in configuration mode, so I have to add a do in front of this. So do show IP interface brief will tell me the list of interfaces in my router. I go to interface path 00 and I add an IP address here that is in the same subnet with the IP address of router 1. So I use IP address and IP add will be enough for this. 10.0.12 2 is the IP address that I'm assigning to router 2, and I will assign a 24-bit mask to router 2's interface to have the same subnet ID and the same mask. So I bring it up with no shutdown, and now I have my interface working after a second. So if I hit the up arrow key several times to see the show IP interface brief command, I can hit enter and I can see that this interface is working right now. Now I have two neighboring interface configured together. The interface of router 1 path 00 and interface of router 2 path 00. Now they should be able to communicate to each other. To do this, I type in a ping command. Ping is the verification command that I'm going to use mostly, and of course you will use ping command a lot of times. So I type in 10.0.12.2 from router 1. I want to ping 10.0.12.2. That is the IP address of router 2's interface, and I hit enter. And after a while, you can see that this command is successful. Now, these exclamation marks means successful, and this character means unsuccessful. Mostly, the first ping will be unsuccessful because it hasn't, the MAC address of the router 2's interface in its ARP cache. And when I'm talking about ARP, I will talk about this and what it means and how we can, avoid this. So now we have communicated successfully to router 2, and I want to configure other interfaces as well. So I want to configure router 1 and router 3's interface. To do this, I go to router 1, I go to enable mode, I go to configuration mode, I go to interface configuration mode of path01 interface, and first of all I no shutdown it. The order of commands is not important here, so I add IP address 10.0.13.1, and this is gonna be a 24-bit masked interface, and this is done. I go to router 3 and go to privilege mode. I go to configuration terminal mode. I have interface path01 connected to router 1. So I go to path01, I no shut it first. I add an IP address 10.0.13.3, and this is gonna be a 24-bit mask as well. Now I want to check if this is working. So I do ping. I'm in privilege mode, so I am not in privilege mode, so I have to add this do here. I ping 10.0.13.1, and you can see that this ping is successful as well. Okay, now I go to router 2 and configure the connection between router 2 and 5. So I go to interface path 0, router 2 and 4, excuse me, path 01, and I no shut down this command. I add an IP address of 10.0.24.2 and 24-bit mask and hit enter. I go to router 4 and configure the relevant interface. I go to enable mode, the configuration mode, and an interface path01. I add an IP address of 10.0.24.4 and 24-bit mask again, and no shutdown it. As I told you, the order of commands is not important right here, but there are cases that you have to be careful about the order of commands. Now, I want to check the connectivity, so I use the ping command. Because I am in configuration mode, I use do in front of the ping, so I type in 10 0 24 2, and now I can see that this is working as well. Now we have configured the neighboring interfaces, and the neighboring interfaces can ping each other. This is what we have right now. I type in end and save the configuration using the WR command. Of course, I can use another command to save the configuration, and this is the new command that you can use. That's copy command. Copy command can save a lot of things, but here I'm going to save the running config. That is the configuration that is in router's RAM to startup config. The startup config is the configuration that is saved in a file in flash memory of your router. So you may have different configuration in your startup config and the running config. Whenever you start your router, the startup config is the same as the running config, and of course the opposite is correct. But after you start configuring your router and add some commands, those commands will apply to your router but will not be saved in startup config. So you have to save it manually after a moment to make sure that every configuration you have made will be effective even after a reboot of your router. So be careful about this. Whenever you type in some commands, try to save it. And specifically when you are taking the exam, you have to save everything because they will reboot your routers, and your configuration will be gone, and you will not be, scored for what you have tried for. So copy running config to startup config means whatever in running config, that is the RAM. Whatever it is, whatever there is in running config, you should save it to the file that is in your flash memory. So I hit enter, and you can see that it asks me, do you want to save it to the file that is named startup config? By default, the file that is in your flash memory is saved as startup config, and I want to save it to the same file, but you are you have the option of changing the file name and have a backup of your running config. So I don't want to have a backup, so I hit enter and I accept the command output, and after a while you will have your configuration saved to your startup config. I use WR in other routers, and I want to go to privilege mode first by typing end and typing the WR. WR will save your configuration to the file that is named startup config, but it won't ask you to verify this. So whenever I want to just save the running config to startup config, I just type in WR, and this is of course the old-fashioned command that we use to save our configuration. That's okay for me because mostly I'm just interested to save my running config to the startup config file. So I won't use a copy command. That's a little cumbersome, a little too long, and I have to verify it every time. But in WR, I don't have to verify it. Okay. I go to router 2, and again I go to privilege mode and save it using write memory, and I will do the same in router 1, of course. Now I have all fast Ethernet interfaces configured. I will configure my serial interfaces in later sections, and I'm not going to do this right now. Whenever I try to talk about frame relay, I won't do it. So next section I'm going to talk about some simple show commands and the CDP protocol, and next I will go to talk about ARP.